Well, let's bring in our guest for this hour here to discuss. We have trial attorney Trey Gober. What's your take right now on this cross-examination? What sticks out to you?
But it's really slow. Even the defendant seems bored, and this is her trial. So it's hard to keep a jury after lunch interested and paying attention when you're getting in, especially these kind of financial records. It's just a slow document, intense testimony. So hopefully the defense is able to pick it up and perk up the jury in order to carry water for the defendant at the end of the day to do their job.
Trey, to that point, you do keep seeing defense counsel kind of going back, looking at her notes, maybe looking at her outline here. I mean, frankly, I think this detective, could be very helpful to the defense, and they could really get some more out of her in more of a rapid-fire way to keep the jurors more engaged in regard to the things we've talked about. The red flags. At first, she thought somebody else did this to the defendant. And there would be a lot of things that you could really go after as defense counsel to get the detective to say more how she felt this little girl, young girl, was in a really bad situation.
Exactly, and the detective keeps trying to go down those paths, but it's getting interrupted by defense counsel. So you have to be very careful as a trial lawyer to not get hyper-focused on, I have this many exhibits, I need to get in, what's the process and procedure to get that information in. It's more about listening than talking. And so you have an opportunity here, you have a witness that could be very credible, very compelling for the jury. And so let that witness do the talking for you, lead them down that path rather than getting hyper-focused on these documents. Get an en masse offer with some of these documents and move on.
Yeah, really good points, yeah.
Well, we're watching this very closely. We're going to fit in a short break. Trey, you're going to stick with us for this hour. Thanks for being with us. And you don't go anywhere, you at home, because we're going to have more out of the Canton, Georgia area in this trial, the baby cult murder trial, when we come back. Let's bring in our attorney guest for this hour, Trey Gober. Picked up a little bit, sir, don't you think?
It did, and I think certainly we can see the defense strategy here is forming. I don't know that this is necessarily going to be helpful to guilt innocence, to establishing that the defendant was insane and didn't understand right or wrong. This seems to be more punishment testimony, so that the jury might, if the jury pulls the trigger on a guilty verdict, maybe there's a lesser punishment because of the abuse and difficult situation the defendant's living in. But when the defendant goes upstairs and locks the door, that's a pretty good sign that she knew what she was doing was wrong. And that's a high hurdle to overcome. But at least it might mitigate on punishment.
That is a high hurdle to overcome. And as we were talking about the last hour, in regard to Georgia law, they can still get to that insanity by this, did defendant act in a delusional way that her behavior overmastered her own will? So they still could get to it by that. And with this witness on the stand talking about the fact that this person she was with, her husband, was withholding her baby, taking the baby away from her, that can make a woman go kind of crazy, I think, and then come to that moment, 2 months, nobody was doing anything to help her behavior. It was deteriorating. I think we're getting a lot from this witness if you want to go on the defense's side here.
Absolutely. It certainly is going to help the defense's position. I think we all have a sense that a mother who's healthy, sane mental state would never attempt to injure their child. So something was amiss, something was off. That's the only way a mother would injure a child, especially a 13-month-old infant. So something is off, and the defense is doing a good job with the facts they have to establish that. It's still just a very high hurdle to get insanity at the time of the offense.
And they didn't believe in medicine,
right.
Western medicine or anything of that nature. You know, they were just kind of living off the grid and kind of ignoring the problems in front of them.
Yeah. Well, they were talking about that CBD and how there's been testimony that the Jason Spillers from the CBD, he didn't notice any effects, but They were talking about this girl and the defendant, and when she was taking the CBD, she said that she started to act different and was paranoid. So very important testimony here. All right, thanks to Trey Gober for joining us this hour.
Still ahead, more testimony out of Atlanta, Georgia area in the cult baby murder trial.